I'm Alex Hirsch, and I talk way too much.
I'm Rob Renzetti, and I have a beautiful voice.
I'm Matt Chapman, and I'm an ungodly monstrosity in the air.
Not just an ungodly monstrosity, the ungodly monstrosity who wrote this episode.
Yes.
Matt, what can you tell us about the development of Dungeons, and More Dungeons?
It was super fun to write because it was like an episode that had all this stuff with Ford, which was like this new guy on the show that you got to pay off and see all this fun time with, but then it didn't need a ton of the like heavy lifting. You know, it progressed things along with this rift and all that stuff, but we still got to have like a ton of fun, like a season 1, episode, which so it kind of was perfect that it rode those lines. It made my job easy and fun.
Yeah, and we desperately needed an episode that was lighter and sillier and just generally easier on the audience at this point after so much heavy lifting and heavy drama of the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, there was definitely a feeling around the office like those last 2 episodes were draining. Like draining to write, draining to watch. They're so heavy, and we've changed the show permanently by adding this new character, and you need to believe that with this new character, it can still be a fun, silly show.
Yeah, and this episode does a great job of that.
Well, and I mean, Matt, I remember, you were the writer on this episode, and this whole kind of cold open with him in the magnet gloves and the way that would work was really kind of your concept. And I remember seeing this and feeling so like grateful to the writers, like you guys had figured out a way to make this guy like a fun character and to see him from Dipper's point of view, which is really what I think we needed at this point in the season.
Yep.
Yeah, well, especially for this episode, you want to set it up as being like, he's like the coolest toy that's down in the basement that Dipper really wants to play with, and he is not allowed to play with him.
Yeah.
And so it was, the more you could lay that, the thicker you could lay that on, the better.
There was a way that I kind of thought about this also in the writer's room, which is that, the first 3 quarters of the series are sort of about Dipper's crush on Wendy, and this final quarter is sort of about his crush on the author.
Yeah. I remember you talking about that.
He's such a fan of this guy, and he's so used to being denied that which he's a fan of, and he's never found anybody who cares about his nerdy stuff. Mabel doesn't care, Stan doesn't care, Seuss cares, but on a different level.
Yeah.
He's so hungry for the approval of somebody like Ford, and this idea that they would bond over a nerdy board game felt like sort of the way to do this big idea in a sort of grounded way.
Yeah, I like that better than Ford presented Dipper with the 5 trials of the genius boy.
Right.
I passed these when I was your age. Can you do it too? And it's like, nope, he just likes the same dork game that he does. Like, I think that's a better way for them to bond.
There was a few different, Matt, maybe you'll remember this a little better than me. I remember that we were having a bit of a hard time figuring out what the first episode would be out of the gate after 2 stands, and there was a lot of exploration of, well, maybe it's an episode about Ford reclimatizing to, he's from the 80s.
Right, yeah.
He doesn't know about the shack, and he doesn't know about the town, and he's got to learn about what the modern world is like. Do you remember those versions?
Yeah, they didn't last a long time.
No.
But I think they just, what we found was that those were best as like joke. We were like, all that information can be in funny jokes in any story that we tell.
Yeah.
And so they're still in there. There's like those parts where like Dipper and him bond over both not being around for the 90s and not being like a positive thing for them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was where we were like, okay, you can still get all those little nuggets of info that Ford wasn't around. What does he not know about this or that? But then we could tell a fun D&D story.
Well, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons.
No, nor have I.
Not once in my entire life.
Well, that's not true. I played it once. In my teen years.
My ignorance should be obvious in the fact that I
Matt, were you a big player of the D&D?
I think I made characters with a friend whose older brother played about 10 times. We loved making characters, and then we'd like open up the book and be like, wait, what do we do now?
Well, this is definitely like the jokes that I added in this episode completely come from my ignorance. Where Stan comes in and says like, yeah, only nerds would invent a game where charisma is a fantasy power. Like that's as much as I know about Dungeons and Dragons. F. Clorp is 100% Matt Chapman creation.
Hey, if it doesn't roll off the tongue at all, it's a word I made up. I like that the Seuss's acronym for that has the word legitimate in it.
Yes,
It just feels like you had to include that in there or nobody would take him seriously.
That's right. And now they are taken very seriously.
I believe that this first act is storyboarded by Emmy Ciceriga, and this Stan acting here. Shield yourself under an elfin buttress. That little people have made gifs out of that, much to my misery.
You guys just aren't smart enough to understand it.
But here already we're seeing the arrival of Ford is creating this sort of, the two sets of twins are starting to pair off between the Brainiacs and the Maniacs.
17. And this is sad.
Aww.
The idea that the shack had been completely destroyed in the previous episode, we saw that thing fly into the air and crash to the ground. We know that it's built by Manly Dan. It's not a magical building.
Well, it's magical in this show because it gets destroyed how many times?
A lot.
About 4 or 5 times.
We sort of
It
took
always comes back.
our cartoon license of, okay, we're not just going to have it be completely back to normal.
Yeah,
we're going to show that it's under construction. We're going to show that the
yeah.
town is not very bright about what just happened.
Right.
So that by the next episode, it's put back together enough for us to
Yes.
believe this.
Yes.
It's like those couple times when the coyote has some bandages on after falling
Right,
off of a cliff.
exactly.
And you're like, wait, he's still hurt from the last time. Wow.
We were the opposite. We tried not to use cartoon license hardly at all. We tried to make things feel grounded and real as much as we could. At least the real part, the magical stuff, obviously.
Yeah,
is
we
magical,
took great
but-
pains to add what we could to break that feeling that things that just are free of consequence.
Yes.
But we also had to constantly balance that between our need to have big, crazy adventure.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying, like, with the coyote thing, it's like, I think it's a thing that people love. Like, fans of something, like, want that, like, they know that I watched the last one, and they're referencing the knowledge
yeah.
I have from that one now.
Even I think the fans fell in love with even the smallest references to past episodes that the characters would,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was
reference.
so impressed with the way this was storyboarded, because the way it was written, I wasn't sure how that contraption would work, and I think was it
It's well done. I don't know. Was this? No, this is Vaughn. This is Vaughn.
It
Tata.
was Vaughn Tata. Yeah, I don't mention him enough on the commentaries. Wonderful storyboard artist.
Yeah, really good. Great appealing drawings.
Incredibly talented.
and really smart about that kind of stuff. Though I do find his.
That's Alonzo drawing right there. The blinking.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Alonzo.
Annoying.
You know his weakness, right?
Prime statistical anomalies over 37, but not exceeding 51.
I wanted to hear
Oh,
that.
man.
Whose line is that?
That was
Matt?
originally Roll for Dominion, but we felt we needed to make it longer and
Yeah.
dumber.
Yeah.
Yo, this is me and Josh. I think it's one of those ones where it's kind of 50-50. Like, I think I wrote up until about when they get taken, and then Josh wrote the rest. But then we
okay.
both did little joke passes.
Well,
That's
this
right.
is you.
This is all me, though, I will admit.
This is the Chapman
Matt,
special.
This is Chapman distilled to his purest essence.
And that's definitely your voice saying Diggity Dungeons and all that, right?
Yeah, 9 double deuce. The nine double deuce is when I was actually making terrible hip hop and referring to 1994 as the 9 double deuce in my terrible suburban hip hop.
I always forget you had your hip hop phase. This
Yeah.
must be why you
Yeah.
and Jeff have like a special bond.
We both went through like super nerds about hip hop and then super nerds about like indie rock.
This idea of an infinity die was something where we needed to spin the episode into our weekly monstrous adventure. I think if I have any regrets about this episode, it's that like we're trying to establish Ford as this really smart, reasonable guy, but he is a bit too cavalier.
Right.
I think with
But
this object.
I enjoy that. I enjoy that he's got a little bit of a reckless side because it shows you the Stan part of him. You know what I mean? The Stan part of Ford. The little bit of like he likes a little bit of danger. He likes a little bit of risk.
Well, and if he would show that side, it would be when he feels with a kindred spirit, right?
Yes,
like
of
around
course.
somebody like Stan, he'd put
No,
up that
he would
wall.
never do-
Around
no,
Dipper,
no,
he'd
no.
be like, "Oh, isn't this pretty cool? What do you think?"
Yeah, he'd never be that irresponsible around Stan.
Yeah, I like that Dipper is sort of a little bit of a Achilles heel for Ford as well. I think that's cool too.
That's a really I never thought of it that way. But you're right that like Ford has certain blind spots, and Dipper exacerbates some of those.
He doesn't make fun of me
just because he's willing to encourage. He's willing to yes and Ford towards whatever dumb idea he might have.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Dipper, Mabel, Stan, and Ford, they're all characters who need each other. You know, without Dipper, Mabel's just in a fantasy land. Without Mabel, Dipper is just sort of
Spiraling in his own misery.
Spiraling into his own neurosis, you know, not being pulled into those social situations, not growing as a person. This is definitely a Josh Weinstein joke. I think we all remember where we were when Duck Detective was shot. You're right. That's right. Josh Weinstein wrote the second half of this episode, and classic jokes like that. These, this dialogue in this scene about, you know, there's a lot of Duck Detective has a strong mystery element, a lot of jokes that go over kids' heads. That's definitely a Weinstein. That's, you know, one of the amazing things about Josh is, you know, he's this classic Simpsons writer, but he was also a big fan of Gravity Falls. And when he came onto the show for season 2, he was a fan of season 1. So jokes like this are, you know, him saying why he came onto the series,
basically defending his involvement in Gravity
defending
Falls.
His career choice to be involved with our show. I have to mention, there's in the background we see Smurgle, I think Omadon and Gorbash. Those are the names of the dragons in the very not well-known animated movie in the 80s, Flight of Dragons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which the only reason I'm referencing it is that Jason Ritter, who's Dipper's dad, John Ritter, was the main character of the movie Flight of Dragons.
Wow.
And I remember I was talking about this episode with Jason about how it's Dungeons and Dragons. Did you ever play that? And he's like, I loved it, and I loved this movie, this cartoon my dad was in called Flight of Dragons that no one's ever heard of. And I had some friends who had heard of it. So I was like, you know, for Jason's sake, we made reference to that movie in there. And here we meet my childhood hero, Weird Al Yankovic.
I like that Ballway Games also does some tabletop
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Ballway Games, that started in the...
that's the pinball
the
machine.
pinball,
Yeah. Just amusements, general amusements.
takes Seuss and the kids hostage.
We try to keep our brands consistent throughout the show. Beebly Boops is the name of electronics.
Yeah.
Ballway is the name of games.
The gamers.
I think Nyums is the candy corporation.
Oh,
Yeah, this is all the Weinstein section. These designs, also Robert Ryan Corey designs, I specifically asked him for the goblin to reference the goblins from the Rankin Bass Hobbit, just because those are the creepiest goblins ever animated.
That's a very creepy movie, generally.
Very specific pull. So we've definitely gone into our weekly ridiculousness. Stan, Mabel, and Grenda
it's a great trio.
It's a trio we've never seen before in the series.
And I know we debated, like, do we need to have Candy here? Why is Grenda here without Candy? And we're just like, no, Candy has no role to play here. We're already too full of characters. We'll just leave her at home today.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I think we just decided Candy was not really a fan of Detective. This is where she just tapped out. She's like, yeah, you guys enjoy that show without me.
It's funny to me that Candy thinks she's too good for Duck
Yeah.
Detective. Like, Candy's like, please, I can do better than this. I tape forks to my fingers, but I draw the line at a duck dressed as a detective.
I like Grenda's weapon is the chair. Only she could wield that effectively. She's a very strong little girl.
So I remember I think it was a cool idea. I think it might have been Josh's idea that sort of Dipper and Ford bond over their intelligence, and then they, of course, summon a creature who wants to eat their brains. It seems like a sort of fitting punishment for characters who pride themselves in their brains. Hot Elf, where did he come from? Was that you, Matt?
That's me. I'm the voice, and I think I put Hot Elf in there.
You could try to come up with a super clever name that's a riff off of a Lord of the Rings name, but Hot Elf cuts to the chase. Brevity's a solo wit. Well done.
Hey, look, listen.
Oh, and I got to do that Navi voice there too, which was maybe one of my favorite moments of voice acting on the show.
Hey, listen.
This scene where Grenda just knocks him out, and Mabel thinks he's dead,
and he might be dead, but
Stan's the forest keeps its secrets.
I like that Stan and Grenda now have a secret between them. That they're like, yeah, we understand each other. We know neither one of us wants to go to the cops on this.
And now a little math problem. When I subtract your brain from your skulls, add salt, and divide your family, what's the remainder?
Your butt!
What? My butt isn't part of this particular equation? Drat! How did you make it past my one guard? Very well. There's only one way your family can save you. You must defeat me in Dungeons, and more dungeons.
This whole sequence is incredibly ambitious.
Yeah.
And at this point in the season, we had just done Tale of Two Stands. We had done Not What He Seems. These crazy episodes with huge action and all these different backgrounds. And I think our artists probably could have used a break at this point, and instead we're like, no, we're doing a bunch of fantasy characters, and they go inside a game, and it's CG, and there's an ogre NATO. An ogre NATO. Just design that. Just give us an ogre NATO.
And a centaur tar.
This apple slices. This joke was specifically me making fun of my friends who I played Pokemon cards with, because it was always like one kid has the snacks packed by his mom's. Like one kid's got like shark bites, white shark, mystery flavor. Then one kid's like oxidized apple slices. They turn brown before I opened the Ziploc bag.
What a sad snack.
This is
a sad snack to feed your child.
Because I never played Dungeons and Dragons, so it's like I have memories of Pokemon card playing. The only
It's close enough. It's close enough.
The only time
Yeah,
I
I
ever
think
played
there's a lot of
Dungeons
universal truths there.
yeah. Well, I feel like the types of people who play these games, there's a lot of overlap.
Well, see, now I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, but I am a huge board game
exactly
geek.
like this.
I'm
That's
a huge
true.
board game geek. I'm not into role-playing games, but board games, my wife and I have a cabinet full of them. And
You can't
one
see
more
it,
complicated than the next.
listeners, but Rob's glasses are like 6 inches thick.
And there's tons of tape all over them.
The only time I ever played Dungeons and Dragons in my life was with Pendleton Ward, creator of Adventure Time, and Pat McHale, creator of Over the Garden Wall. We were all working on a show called Flapjack together, and they had Dungeons and Dragons night, and they invited me, and I asked, "What are the rules?" And Pat said, there are no rules. It can be anything. And then they spent an hour arguing over how many dogs of war you were allowed to have. And I was just like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I can't handle this. I'll bet the moment I left, it became incredibly fun. And I'm sure if I played it, I would love it. I'm the last person left who hasn't gotten around to it.
Well, very, very much like the incredibly complicated board games I play, I think Dungeons and Dragons, there's a learning curve, and then once you get past that learning curve, you can relax and have fun. But it's that's a gateway. That's a gate for a lot of people that they're not willing to breach.
Sure. That speaking of things no one should want to breach.
Yes.
The centaur tar. I drew this on a napkin and I didn't know if it would work. And
it works beautifully.
God bless Emmy Ciceriga for figuring out how to pose that creature out.
Especially I remember the
She did
board
such a good
specifically
job.
for when Ford and Dipper get onto it, how posed out that was, which made it very easy to figure out in animation.
Insanely difficult.
That's
difficult.
some Robert
and
Ryan
ambitious.
Corey right there as well, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, Robert Ryan Corey can't just draw a normal monster. He's got to put eyeballs inside the horns. This is why he's amazing.
You don't understand. This is the most powerful monster in the game. He can only be defeated by rolling a perfect 38. But the odds of that are...
Hey, long odds are what you want when you're a world-class gambler.
So we like the idea that Stan appears to win through dumb luck, that it's sort of intelligence versus gut, but Stan wouldn't actually bet everyone's life on a dice roll. He's a cheater. At the end of the day, I believe that Stan has been thrown out of Vegas for counting cards and for weighing dice, and I believe he could con his way out of any game, particularly for an obnoxious wizard like this. Weird Al was a pleasure to work with. He's the only guy I've ever worked with who I normally ask for a few too many takes. It's one of my weaknesses as a director. Al's the guy who's like, that was fun. Can we do more? Can I add some more takes? Let's do 5 more. Let's hang out. What are you doing later? Like, he's just such a sweet guy.
Goodbye, Al.
Bye, Al.
Man, that was amazing. How did you know that you would win?
Hey, a gambler never
There you
reveals his
go.
secret.
At the end of the day, I'm the worst. And I think we added a setup of him chewing gum earlier in the episode so that it's not completely ridiculous that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, because was there a version where it was just dumb luck?
I
And
think
the
there
idea
was.
Like,
I
oh,
think
he's
there
just the
was.
guy that would take the risk.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, no, I love the gum.
We
I
want
think
him to be a
that's,
little smarter than that.
Yeah, after
Yeah.
after episodes like and Gravity Falls, it's like we're always experimenting with tone, and some episodes are much more grounded and more serious, and some are sort of sillier, but after an episode like Not What He Seems, the idea that Stan would gamble everyone on pure chance is like, no. He's got a plan. This is the guy who escaped prison using gravity leaps. He's got a way out.
I love everything about that.
I think that's you and I. Aren't you and I those two ducks?
That's true. Yeah, we gotta give the audience a little bit of what they came here for. There's our setup of Ford's UFO keychain, which we're going to use later to great effect. I remember when right before this episode was sort of complete, I was looking through it, and I was a little concerned that we had gone a bit too far into the goofy and not enough into the continuity, and I actually added a scene here where Dipper tells Ford his real name.
Oh, wow.
Because Dipper's a nickname. There used to be a
I remember
scene
that.
where Ford is like, thank you, Dipper, and then Dipper just blurts out his name because it's the first time anybody has like trusted him and listened to him, and he's so hungry for it that it just pops out of him. And I wrote it out, and I showed it to a few people, and I was like, what do you think? Is this good? Does this go too far? And I think the consensus was there wasn't really time for it, and it was such a big idea that it required setup that I don't think we found room for. I'm still sort of on the fence. I'm not sure if I wish I should have kept it in or not.
I don't know. I feel like
was Dipper and Mabel versus the Future had the same? Didn't we try to put it?
We tried it there as well.
That
Yeah.
too.
We had two different spots where we considered it, and it never quite played. So I think it's good that we put it in the journal. It gave a nice little sort of
definitely,
surprise
of course.
for people reading the
And I
journal.
feel like there's enough of an exchange of intimacies there,
That
for
we
lack of a
understand
better
the setup here. Dipper has been told for the first time, keep something from Mabel.
Yeah.
And I think there's a contingency of the fans that are like, oh, Mabel, she's so awful for giving that globe to Blendon. And it's like, if Dipper, after this scene, had immediately gone to Mabel and been like, hey, our crazy uncle, he wants me to guard this orb. He didn't want me to tell you about it, but you should know about it. There would have been no apocalypse.